In addition, the cemetery program, like I mentioned, the Monterey Cemetery is, we're having that groundbreaking. There's some interest in the development of cemetery in Southern California on the old El Toro site. We went down last month, and DGS is currently doing some preliminary analysis of that to see what the remediation requirements would be and so forth. It's a big piece of land, 125 acres, much of which is old airfield. So there's the tarmac and typical military post type of stuff, fuel depots and things of that nature. So we're taking a look at that to see what possibilities are there, the feasibility of actually building a cemetery there. We operate the Prop 63 mental health grants. Those are grants.
Let me
sure, go ahead.
Back to your, with the cemeteries and stuff, that goes into, what are you guys doing with the memorials and the, like for the Reading Cemetery and specifically, you guys are moving some of the monuments and stuff like that. What is going on with that?
No, when cemeteries and memorials are something that veterans are very passionate about, as you can imagine, as they should be. Veterans in the Reading area tend to be very active. They are great supporters of that cemetery. A lot of ideas for memorials up there. There are some memorials in place. There has been some concern over whether those memorials will have to be moved due to some changes in the USDVA National Cemetery Administration Code. We've assured them that that is not something that's being discussed at this point. So I appreciate, obviously, that question's come to you. So that would be the answer. We kind of got in a situation where the cemeteries got one, then we had two, and now there's going to be three and maybe four, and it's this process that's growing rapidly. And back to what Secretary Ansley mentioned earlier today, when you have growth like that, there's a lot of statute and code and the CFRs and so forth that govern much of that process. However, it's incumbent upon the state agency to develop regulations that address how those processes and procedures are going to play out. We have developed internal policies and procedures in terms of memorial approval and so forth and the process that goes through. However, we're currently working to put that through the official regulation process, and particularly now with so many cemeteries coming on board, we think it's certainly overdue. So currently we're in the process of putting the regs out for that. There's various memorials up at IGO that folks are interested in doing. These are memorials that were approved on some level in concept many years back, and recently some of these folks have gathered some momentum in terms of their fundraising, so they're very eager to get started. However, that's something we have to watch very closely. I feel very adamantly about the fact that the cemeteries are there to memorialize the service members that are buried there. So you have to be very cautious in terms of memorial placement, particularly size and scope, when you start dealing with cemetery grounds.
Now, is there anything being done to expedite or speed the process along, or is it still, submit paper, another paper, other paper, and back and forth that way, or is there actually using online modern technologies to move these systems forward? That way it's not, we'd like to do a memorial, here's a submission, let's go raise money. When I've gone through this process with Military Order of Purple Heart to get the monument that's at the Fresno VA and a couple others on Fresno State, the process is long and drawn out when it doesn't need to be. Is there any moves from your guys' side to expedite these?
Well, we're looking to expedite it, but the problem is there's, like I said, the regulations need to be put in place. That ensures that everyone has the same access to that cemetery as the next. It also ensures that the memorials will be consistent. We are responsible. We get reimbursements from the feds in terms of for the burials and so forth. They're very strict about how the aesthetic on those cemeteries, and that has been a challenge. There's folks that have a dream of building something, and it's not always going to fit necessarily, because they can be quite large and so forth.
Okay, let's move forward.
Assemblymember Brown.
Thank you so much. My question, you're also the person that's over the Disabled Veterans Business Enterprise program. And I'm looking here because it says that you've actually exceeded the 3% goal in the notes that you've given me. Well, I happen to have at least one business person who is a disabled veteran, and one of the things that he continues to come in and tell me, he's beating the walls, he's saying nobody's listening. He says that there's not access for disabled veterans, and whenever he puts his work through to do the business or to get the business, that it's not as it's just not recognized. So can you talk a little bit about it, because you have that you've exceeded the goals. So my question is, if you've exceeded the goal, who is collecting the data, and who is and just give me a little bit of a feel for what's going on.
Sure. DGS is the agency that runs that program. We are responsible for the outreach and support. Our primary goal is to support the state advocates and make sure they have the information and knowledge necessary to work effectively with disabled veteran business enterprises. Additionally, personally, myself and Angel Carrera from DGS, who oversees this program, we work very closely with the leadership in those agencies to ensure, unfortunately, in many agencies, the person who's the DVBE advocate, it might be, who's the DVB advocate today sort of thing. They have, it's in addition to various other roles they may have. Certain agencies have really focused on that role and highlighted that role and are incredibly effective, while other agencies certainly have some work to do. But to your particular incident, your particular example there, many DVBEs, it's tough because it depends on what product or service they're selling first and foremost. And then it's a matter of marrying them up with the agency that is a true fit for. That's a process that we can help with. It's a process that DGS can help with. We recently, in September, held a matchmaking forum over at DGS, where we brought all the DVBEs in, or those that could attend, as well as many representatives from all the state agencies. We did some preliminary work and matched them up prior to arriving by whatever it is they sell or service they provide, as well as the state agencies, what kind of goods and services they're looking for. So when they got there, they already knew who they were going to meet up with and who they were looking to talk to. It's one of those things. Many DVBEs manage that system really effectively. Others are more challenged. We also started a program that many of the DVBEs that drop off due to some of the reasons you've mentioned, they've tried it, they're banging their heads against the wall, they haven't been able to effectively engage that program. We reach out to them and try to provide them additional education and information that would help them be successful in that. There are situations where a person's business model is not developed in a way that's conducive to state agency contracting. Many, it's size and scope of the business. Oftentimes, those are subcontractors on a primes contract. So there's a variety of ways to do that, and we're certainly developing more ways to get more folks engaged in this process.
Well, I'd really like to turn this person over to you, because my office has spent a lot of our resources, a lot of time trying to help him. His contract, or the contracting opportunities he's looked for, is generally with Caltrans. And he says that he can't do construction, they say. He can only do desk work. well, he can do all kinds of things in his particular business, but he's not being able to be successful.
Well, I'll have a member of my DVB staff reach out to your office, and if you could pass that information on to them, that would be great, and we could follow up. And just another note, CalVet over this past year also developed a DVB first policy, which means any contracts that are under $250,000, they have to be given to a DVBE. If they're not able to find a DVB, then they have to get a waiver in order to go out and contract outside of DVB. So we're very proud of that program.
Say that again. How did they do it?
We did a DVBE first policy, which was for contracts $250,000 and under. So you can go ahead and contract directly with a DVBE, and then if you're not able to find a DVBE, you have to get a waiver, which gives our staff time to assist that agent, to assist whoever it is, the purchaser within our agency, with tracking down potential DVBEs to manage that contract. So it's been very effective, and it's something that we're certainly trying to push with other agencies as well.
I'm sure it would be a really good program if, in fact, it was working, like you said, because we're looking at veterans. Veterans will generally hire another veteran, and it seems that we can help with our unemployment problem with our veterans if, in fact, we can go ahead and let some of these contracts go to the disabled veterans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblymember Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my questions would be dealing with as Assemblymember Mathis had talked about, in the community college as far as veterans resource centers. In my district, one of my community college district has those, and they're very effective. And one of
You
them,
have a couple really good ones in your district.
And the one, I just went to a dinner to try to start one in one of my community college districts, and the president seemed very receptive. How can we augment through CalVet and to make sure, because this is a landing spot for generally our veterans when they're coming back or out of service, and to make sure that they have all the tools in the toolbox that they need to be successful in life. And I'm just thinking, the college districts are saying they're constrained. Where can we partner in that aspect, number one? Number two, on stand downs in my district and throughout the state, we have some wonderful people that are doing these stand downs for homeless veterans and providing a lot of services, Veterans Court, and you name it. What partnership does CalVet do with these organizations that are doing these stand downs? Because some of them are severely constrained and only can give a certain amount of service, and it's very appreciated. But how can we augment that?
Yeah, it's a tough thing. There are funds available through the VA, and then CalVet, we partner with these folks, and we have staff on site at all the stand downs. I think we granted 21 stand downs this year, modest amount. I think it was 45,000 off the top of my head, I think, that went out altogether. And they're usually from 1 to 3 days. They've grown substantially. The services that are offered at stand downs, it's incredible. But it's a challenge. We are fiscally limited in terms of our support. We certainly bring in any of the community-based support, but most of the folks running those stand-downs are pretty savvy at this point, and all those community partners are already involved, and that's why they're so significantly improved over to what they used to be, and how many the additional services that are available to them are incredible. In terms of the working with the county veteran or with the community colleges, I mean, I'm a firm believer. I mean, I know you've done some work around post-secondary education that we certainly appreciate, and community colleges are a landing ground. I mean, it's step number one for a lot of veterans, and if that community college isn't ready to grab them and get them right in the door and up to speed and figure out the path for that particular veteran, you certainly run the risk of them leaving and going perhaps down some other roads that will be more not as cost effective and pan out as well for them in the end, and as you're well aware. So I guess the first thing we've done is working with David Lawrence and the community college system in terms of our outreach materials. We get DD-214s, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of a military birth certificate of sorts. When we get those in and we send out the thank you for your service letters, that's our first initial contact. We don't, unfortunately, we're doing snail mail still because Department of Defense does not give this information to us digitally, or we get it 3 to 6 months after they ETS from the military. And assuming the home record is correct, we have the opportunity to reach them by mail. At that point, we do let them know about the community college system, and in the public systems in California, for that matter, the state and UC. But primarily, it's the community college system that veterans are transitioning into. So we certainly reach out to them on that level and make sure they're informed. We work very closely with the community colleges to develop their veteran resource centers. We recently, the Governor's Interagency Council on Veterans, with some help from us and obviously the community colleges and various districts, are developing a community college survey. So what they're going to do now is they're going to go through each community college and identify what kind of services are available on that campus. Do they have mental health services? If they do have mental health services, are they veteran specific, or is that just kind of an overarching service they provide? And kind of drill down exactly kind of an environmental scan of who's doing what where, and then
Let's go back to that.
Sure.
Okay, every single community college through their financial aid system has to report the status of their veteran situation. There's already a vehicle to get that, and why isn't it being used?
A vehicle to get what?
The information's already reported through the financial aid
The information in terms of number of students on campus?
Number of veteran students, all those numbers are already being reported.
Yeah.
So why are you going to spend money, time, and resources on another study?
It's not really another study. It's more specifically what veteran-specific culturally competent services are available on that campus. Many campuses, every resource center has something different.
The campuses already have that information. So why are we spending the resources to ask them again what they already have when they report that up every single year as part of their regular process and their plan?
Well, I guess the bigger point would be within those resource centers, they're changing daily. They grow, they expand, they contract, they have support from student population, they have support from their school. A lot of things happen. I can go to campuses, and I'm sure Member Frazier is very aware, you can go to a campus and one day there's nothing, the next day you know you have a veteran contingency that suddenly has stood up a resource center. What that resource center entails can vary dramatically, and it can vary from the day they start it till months later, and then perhaps whatever community partner they brought in to provide that mental health screening for post-traumatic stress, they lost a grant, that's gone now. It's really constantly evolving. I understand what your point is.
Those get reported in the quarterly reports for every educational institution in the state. So
the quarterly reports in terms of what exactly the resource center contains?
Yeah, that would go into their financial statements, what they're doing, what services they're providing, and how much it's costing. That goes into those statements. So why isn't it being looked at? Why are we wasting resources to try to gather the information from another source when all we have to do is go, hey, please give me that information?
Well, I think the part of the Governor's Interagency Council, part of their goal is to take information that is in various spots and coalesce it into one grouping. And I feel that I understand what you're saying, and I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but I don't feel they're going in surveying everybody again in terms of, but more so they're gathering information so they can have a document that lets everybody know what's available where. So, for instance, when they come on our MyCalVet site, say they're going to Las Positas, I can go on our, well, not me, but one of my staff can go in there who knows how to work on a computer, and can go in and say Las Positas, Veteran Resource Center, and then list on that website. So when a veteran comes on our website and says, hey, I live...
I understand what's listed on the website.
So when they go in, then we'll be able to have that information. So, you know, Las Positas might have a work study program, or they may have a mental health screening opportunity. They may have a lot of different niche type of services available. And like I said, those change very often. versus, say, City College in San Francisco or something. And that way, what they're doing is just kind of coalescing that information so we can put that in our database and other folks' database. So when a veteran's choosing which school they want to go to, kind of back to Member Frazier's original question, they'll know exactly.
No, I understand
what
that point,
school offers.
and that's great. What I'm saying is we don't need to have Canvases report twice for something they already report when we can just do a very simple file share from the institutions.
Yeah, well, I think it's a process that the Interagency Council is working with the Veteran Resource Centers. Once again, as you know, not all community colleges have Veteran Resource Centers. Quite a few don't, actually. So that's part of the process too, and they've already developed kind of a how-to and also a kind of a template structure that they did about 6 months ago to put out to assist, kind of like a veteran treatment court model, to assist additional community colleges on how to develop a veteran resource center on their campus.
Well, since we're on the topic of education systems in college, how is the department handling the implementation of the Veterans Access and Choice Act when looking at higher education for the use of the GI Bill, and with the deadline coming up in July? And the other part of that question is, we're putting California veterans at risk at losing their GI Bill system by not having the actual plan set. What is your plan of action? What is the department's plan of action to mitigate that risk and ensure that it does not happen?
Well, there's several things we're doing. A couple things I want to clarify. The July 1st date, although it has been widely broadcasted by the VA that it's a drop-dead date, in discussions I've had with the committees in D.C., that is not the intent of the legislation. That's something they're putting out there. However, there are exemptions available. I've been on conference calls with folks from the VA that say there are no exemptions available, which is completely false. There's a process they're supposed to be developing as we speak, and since the passage of this bill, to allow states to who can't necessarily comply by July 1st to have exemptions in a variety of different roles. That's something that's not being, like I said, widely broadcasted. That's something that when I'm in D.C. next week with Secretary Inslee, I'll follow up with it again.
When you finish that, I'd like a private follow-up on that discussion that happened in D.C.
Of course. But in the meantime, and Assemblymember Chavez left, but there's two bills right now that will address the concerns of the community colleges and the CSUs. I think that should straighten out any questions they had in terms of their authority to make those changes. The UC system's a little different. The UC system, all they really need to do is send a letter to the VA stating their intent to comply, and that pretty much does it for them. So that's moving along fine. I think California will have that shored up prior to July 1st, but once again, I'll follow up with you when I get back, because that's a concern of ours. In many other states that aren't that don't meet actually annually, that was a big concern for them, because they said, well, our legislature's not in session. How are we supposed to reach this July 1st deadline? So there's still a lot of questions there on the VA side. So hopefully we'll have those resolved. But in terms of California, things are progressing rather well. And I think, like I said, the community colleges and the CSU should be shored up with the two pieces of legislation that are currently going through the process, and then the UCs will be fine with it.
Okay. Now,
okay, I was going to say, Mr. Mathis has two more questions, and then we will move on to make sure that we finish on time.
Sure.
Thanks.
all right.